reading through the Bible in 1 year. June 27th, Deuteronomy 32, the Song of Moses. Psalms 119 through 119, 121 through 144, Isaiah 59, and Matthew chapter 7. Give ear, O heavens, and let me speak. This is the Song of Moses that God commanded him to speak to the people, to write, that would remind them of who their God is, what he has done for them, and that they need to turn back to him when they fail. Not if they fail, when they fail. Because God was very clear, they are absolutely, positively going to fail him. And he will send them into captivity numerous times. So let's begin. Give ear, O heavens, and let me speak, and let the earth hear the words of my mouth. Let my teaching drop as the rain, my speech distill as the dew, as the droplets on the fresh grass, and as the showers on the herb. For I proclaim the name of the Lord. Again, not just God's name, not what we speak and he hears, or whatever noises we make that he responds to. He's proclaiming the character and nature of who God is. He's declaring to you the truth of God. Ascribe greatness to our God, the rock. His work is perfect, for all his ways are just. A God of faithfulness and without injustice. Righteous is he. They have acted corruptly toward him. They are not his children because of their defect, but are a perverse and crooked generation. Do you thus repay the Lord, O foolish and unwise people? Is he not your father who has bought you? He has made you and established you. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of all generations. Ask your father, and he will inform you, your elders, and they will tell you. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of man, he set the boundaries of the people according to the number of the sons of Israel. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the allotment of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land, and in the howling wastes of a wilderness. He encircled him and cared for him. He guarded him as the pupil of his eye. Like an eagle that stirs up its nest, that hovers over its young, he spread his wings and caught them, and he carried them on his pinions. The Lord alone guided him, and there was no foreign god with him. He made him ride on the high places of the earth, and he ate the produce of the field. He made him suck honey from the rock, and oil from the flinty rock, curds of cows and milk of the flock, with fat of lambs and rams, the breed of Bashan, and goats, with the finest of the wheat, and with the blood of grapes you drank wine. But Jeshurun grew fat and kicked. You are grown fat, thick, and sleek. Then he forsook God who made him, and scorned the rock of his salvation. Maybe like, what? Yeah, we talked about this before. Do you remember? When people get comfortable, right? When they get comfortable with where they are, or when God saves them out of their adversity, the thing that they're struggling with, and they overcome whatever it is that they're going through, they'll eventually get comfortable again. They don't need God to save them anymore. And so they step away from this God of their salvation. They step away entirely and will utterly reject him. Why? Is God not the same God he was before? No, he's absolutely the same God. The difference is that now they think, oh, wait, hold on. I can handle this on my own. Thanks, Jesus, for taking the wheel for a while, but you know what? I can handle it from here. And they reject the God of their salvation. They try to take back over what they had before. And this is why God says this. He's telling through Moses what's going to happen. You're going to get comfortable. Right now, they're getting everything they need from God. He's giving them food. He's giving them shelter. He's protecting them from their enemies, protecting them from wild beasts, right? Everything that they have is given to them directly from God, and they know this. And then they're going to go over into the land of promise, and they're going to start to destroy all of these nations who are greater than they are and mightier and stronger, and utterly wipe them out. Not because of their own power, but because of the God who saves, and because of the God who's giving this land to them. But those people will die, and their children will remember what they have seen in their fathers going out to battle for them and seeing the great works of the Lord in them and through this. They're going to see that. But then those people will die. And then the grandchildren will be there who don't remember anything. They don't have the memory of these because they haven't physically lived them. It's like the adage, bad times produce strong men, and strong men produce good times, and good times produce weak men, and weak men produce hard, bad times. It's that same cycle we see over and over. And we're going to see that happen here. We're going to read through the book of Joshua when the people go over strongly standing on the Lord their God, and they go into the land that they're being given, and they wipe out almost all of the people. And then we get to the book of Judges. And in the first few paragraphs of the book of Judges, we see this playing out exactly as I have said and exactly as God is saying is going to happen here. The people are going to grow complacent. They just think, well, this is the way things have always been. This is just our land. We live here. They don't know the history of it. And as the beginning of the book of Judges says, there arose a people who didn't know war. Not that war was completely random to them, not that they didn't understand what it was. It's that they hadn't fought for the land that they are in. And because they didn't fight for this land, they don't really have a whole lot of care about it. And so they step away. They quit following the things of old. They treat it as tradition and ignore it. And so that's what God's talking about. But Jeshurun, which again, from the Hebrew term of upright, often used to represent Israel, you'll see the same term used throughout most of the prophetic texts. Jeshurun grew fat and kicked. You are grown fat, thick, and sleek. Then he forsook the God who made him and scorned the rock of his salvation. They made him, the people, made God jealous with strange gods. With abominations, they provoked him, the God of their salvation, to anger. They sacrificed to demons who were not God, to gods that they have not known, new gods who came lately, whom your fathers did not dread. You neglected the rock who begot you, and forgot the God who gave you birth. Again, they're like, the people who he's telling this to, they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. He says, just learn it and teach it to your kids. Because your kids won't need it, but your kids' will. The Lord saw all this and spurned them because of the provocation of his sons and daughters. Then he said, excuse me, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end shall be. For they are a perverse generation, sons in whom is no faithfulness. They have made me jealous with what is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their idols. So I will make them jealous with those who are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. For a fire is kindled in my anger, and burns to the lowest part of Sheol. and consumes the earth with its yield, and sets on fire the foundations of the mountains. I will heap misfortunes on them. I will use my arrows, the arrows meant for the enemies of his people, on them. They will be wasted by famine and consumed by plague and bitter destruction. And the teeth of beasts I will send upon them, with the venom of crawling things of the dust. Outside the sword I will bereave, and inside terror. Both young men and virgin, the nursling with the man of gray hair. I would have said, I would cut them to pieces. I will remove the memory of them from men, had I not feared the provocation by the enemy, that their adversaries would misjudge, that they would say, our hand is triumphant, and the Lord has not done this. This is the same thing that happens with the Chaldeans. This is the same thing that happens with all of the people who come in and take over the people of God, who God allows them to do so. What do they say? They say, oh, look at the greatness that we have. Look at what our God has allowed us to do to your gods. Remember that thing we read about from the Rabshakeh? Right? From this military official during the reign of Hezekiah, when he came over and told the people, don't listen to Hezekiah. Hezekiah will tell you to trust in your God. Have the gods of all the peoples around you stopped us from destroying them? Why do you think your God will stop us as well? They thought that they were more powerful than the God of the Hebrews. But they didn't understand that the God of the Hebrews is the grand creator of all things. He is the true King of kings and Lord of lords. He will not allow these lowly little nations to think that they have the authority to overthrow his people. He has allowed them for a short period of time to have power over them, for his purpose and to his glory, not their own. So this is why God doesn't allow them to utterly destroy them. For they are a nation lacking in counsel, and there is no understanding in them. Would that they were wise, that they understood this, that they would discern their future. How could one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight unless their rock had sold them and the Lord had given them up? What's the point he's making? If they had only seen the facts that God has stepped away from them, that he's allowed the nations to come in and take them over, then they would understand what's happening. And then these nations who are attacking them, they would realize that the only reason they have power over them today is because God has allowed them to have that power, and that tomorrow he could take it back. And with one person, he could utterly wipe them out. Look at the story of Gideon. We'll get there if you haven't read it. But it's literally one guy with 300 people against an entire army without a single weapon in their hand. And God utterly destroys the army in front of them. God doesn't need us to accomplish his goals. He doesn't need us to accomplish anything. Indeed, their rock is not like our rock. Even our enemies themselves judge this. For their vine is from the vine of Sodom, and their fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are grapes of poison. Their clusters, bitter. Their wine is the venom of serpents, and the deadly poison of cobras. Is it not laid up in store with me, sealed up sealed up in my treasuries? Vengeance is mine, and retribution. In due time their foot will slip, for the day of their calamity is near, and the impending things are hastening upon them. For the Lord will vindicate his people, and will have compassion on his servants when he sees that their strength is gone. and there is none remaining, bond or free. And he will say, where are their gods? The rock in which they sought refuge. He's talking to his people, to the Jews, the Hebrews. Where are these gods that they worshipped? Where are these gods that they raised up for themselves in place of their true God, their true Redeemer? Where are these that will save you? Once he finally wipes that out of them. Who ate the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their drink offering? Let them rise up and help you. Let them be your hiding place. See now that I am he. And there is no God besides me. It is I who put to death and give life. I have wounded, and it is I who will heal. And there is no one who can deliver from my hand. Indeed, I lift up my hand to heaven and say, as I live forever, if I sharpen my flashing sword and my hand takes hold on justice, I will render vengeance on my adversaries, and I will repay those who hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword will devour flesh, with the blood of the slain and of the captives, from the long-haired leaders of the enemy. Rejoice, O nations, with his people. For he will avenge the blood of his servants, and will render vengeance on his adversaries, and will atone for his land and for his people. Then Moses came and spoke all the words of this song in the hearing of all the people, he with Joshua the son of Nun. When Moses had finished speaking all these words to Israel, he said to them, take to your heart all the words which I am warning you today, which you shall command your sons to observe carefully, even all the words of this law. For it is not an idle word for you. Indeed, it is your life. And by this word you will prolong your days in the land, which you are about to cross the Jordan to possess. The Lord spoke to Moses that very same day, saying, go up to this mountain of the Abarim near Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab opposite Jericho, and look at the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the sons of Israel for a possession. Then die on the mountain where you ascend, and be gathered to your people, as Aaron your brother died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. Because you broke faith with me in the midst of the sons of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin, because you did not treat me as holy in the midst of the sons of Israel. You shall see the land at a distance, but you shall not go there, into the land which I am giving to the sons of Israel. And that's all the notes for there. Let's go on to Psalms 119, 121 through 144. I have done justice and righteousness. Do not leave me to my oppressors. Be surety for your servant for good. Do not let the arrogant oppress me. My eyes will fail with longing for your salvation and for your righteous word. Deal with your servant according to your loving kindness, and teach me your statutes. I am your servant. Give me understanding, that I may know your testimonies. It is time for the Lord to act, for they have broken your law. Therefore I love your commandments above gold, yes, above fine gold. Therefore I esteem right all your precepts concerning everything. I hate every false way. Hey. Your testimonies are wonderful, therefore my soul observes them. The unfolding of your words gives light. It gives understanding to the simple. I opened my mouth wide and panted, for I longed for your commandments. Turn to me and be gracious to me, after your manner with those who love your name. Establish my footsteps in your word, and do not let any iniquity have dominion over me. Redeem me from the oppression of man, that I may keep your precepts. Make your face shine upon your servant, and teach me your statutes. My eyes shed streams of water, because they do not keep your law. I literally have no idea how to say this. Sade, I think. Sade? Sadi, that one. It looks like this. Righteous are you, O Lord, and upright are your judgments. You have commanded your testimonies in righteousness and exceeding faithfulness. My zeal has consumed me, because my adversaries have forgotten your words. Your word is very pure, therefore your servant loves it. I am small and despised, yet I do not forget your precepts. Your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your law is truth. Trouble and anguish have come upon me, yet your commandments are my delight. Your testimonies are righteous forever. Give me understanding that I may live. Now Isaiah 59. Behold, the Lord's hand is not so short that it cannot save, nor is his ear so dull that it cannot hear. But your iniquities have made a separation between you and God, and your sins have hidden his face from you so that he does not hear. Not that God has hidden his face from them because of their sins. Their sins have blocked him out. For your hands are defiled with blood, and your fingers with iniquity. Your lips have spoken falsehood, your tongue mutters wickedness. No one sues righteously, and no one pleads honestly. They trust in confusion and speak lies. They conceive mischief and bring forth iniquity. They hatch adder's eggs and weave spider's webs. He who eats of their eggs dies, and from that which is crushed a snake breaks forth. Their webs will not become clothing, nor will they cover themselves with their works. Their works are works of iniquity, and an act of violence is in their hands. Their feet run to evil, and they hasten to shed innocent blood. Their thoughts are thoughts of iniquity. Devastation and destruction are in their highways. They do not know the way of peace, and there is no justice in their tracks. They have made their paths crooked. Whoever treads on them does not know peace. Therefore, justice is far from us, and righteousness does not overtake us. We hope for light, but behold darkness, for brightness, but we walk in gloom. We grope along the wall like blind men. We grope like those who have no eyes. We stumble at midday, as in the twilight. Among those who are vigorous, we are like dead men. All of us growl like bears and moan sadly like doves. We hope for justice, but there is none. For salvation, but it is far from us. For our transgressions are multiplied before you, and our sins testify against us. For our transgressions are with us, and we know our iniquities. Transgressing and denying the Lord, and turning away from our God, speaking oppression and revolt, conceiving in and uttering from the heart lying words. Justice is turned back, and righteousness stands far away. For truth has stumbled in the street, and uprightness cannot enter. Yes, truth is lacking, and he who turns aside from evil makes himself a prey. Now the Lord saw, and it was displeasing in his sight that there was no justice. And he saw that there was no man, and was astonished that there was no one to intercede. Then his own arm brought salvation to him, and his righteousness upheld him. Note here on verse 16. No one to intercede. As we've already talked about, especially yesterday and the day before, going over the Sermon on the Mount, there is no one to help you. God's standard is perfection. From the moment you're born until the moment you die, in order for you to get into heaven on your own ability, on your own works, you have to live a life of perfect worship of God for who he is. And every action in your life and every thought that you have in your head has to reflect that. Why? Because he's the creator of all. He's the one who defines what is right and what is wrong. He is the one who defines it, not us, not our own views, not our own feelings, not what we saw on TV or what somebody on Tumblr says. It's none of those things that makes us right before a pure and holy God. And if for a moment we think, well, God isn't just, it's us, we're the ones who have it right, you're already wrong. Because God is the one who determines all of these things. He is the one who knows what is right. And his standard is perfection. Knowing full well that you or I could never do it. That's why he says right here, there is no one to intercede. Who are you going to take? What's the best person you could possibly think of? Is it the Pope? Is the Pope the best person who ever lived? He needs somebody to intercede for him and not a previous Pope. He needs Jesus to die in his place. He needs the perfect Christ to take his place. Just like I do, just like you do, just like everybody does. There is nobody to intercede between God and mankind except Jesus the Christ. God in human flesh. Back to the note here. No one can intercede, for the Lord has turned his face away from his people because of their sins. Because of the depth of their sins. He literally can't look on sin. It's the sin that blocks God from seeing us. He can't look on us because we are embodied with that same sin. Until that fundamental breach in their relationship is dealt with, there can be no restoration. Yet no human can act as the mediator, since all are implicated through their own transgressions. Remember how the priests had to go up first before they did any other sacrifices for the day? They had to go up and atone for their own sins. Then they could serve for the people. It's the same thing we see here. God himself will have to act alone to accomplish this salvation, proving that his arm is not too short after all, as was mentioned in verse 1. He put on righteousness like a breastplate, and a helmet of salvation on his head. He put on garments of vengeance for clothing, and racked himself with zeal as a mantle. According to their deeds, so he will repay. Wrath to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. The coastlands he will make recompense. So they will fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. For he will come like a rushing stream, which the wind of the Lord drives. A Redeemer will come to Zion, and those who turn from transgression in Jacob. To those who turn from transgression in Jacob, declares the Lord. As for me, this is my covenant with them, says the Lord. My spirit which is upon you, and my words which I have put in your mouth, shall not depart from your mouth, nor from the mouth of your offspring, nor from the mouth of your offspring's offspring, says the Lord, from now on and forever. Now let's go read about what that Redeemer has to say. So this is the end of the Sermon on the Mount. Again, he's speaking to a bunch of people who are there, but largely to his disciples. This is their early commission for the work that he has for them. He continues, "Do not judge so that you will not be judged. For in the way that you judge, you will be judged, and by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you." Now, I've heard a lot of people use this, the judge not lest you be judged, against me. And these people who are saying it don't believe in the Bible. They just think that I'm judging them, even though I'm just reading what Scripture says. I'm allowing God to judge them because that's how God saved me, by showing me his judgments against me. But they'll use the same thing over and over. The note on this is great, and it goes into the rest of the statements as well. But Jesus prohibits one kind of judging, or one motive for judging, but approves a different kind. Condemning others for their faults is failure to exercise forgiveness. Remember, we just went over that in detail, how important forgiveness is for the heart of a Christian. Only a gentle and humble correction that first recognizes one's own greater faults, the log in one's own eye we're about to get through, can help. There is also a necessary, discerning kind of judgment that does not condemn, but distinguishes unbelief from belief. The method of discernment is given, as we'll get to later in verse 16. "So do not judge so that you will not be judged. For in the way that you judge, you will be judged." Seems weird, right? Don't judge. But then it says in verse 2 that you will judge. But the standard by which you judge other people is the standard by which you will be judged. "Why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye?" He's warning them not to be hypocrites, because he's had a lot so far to say about hypocrites, remember? "Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye? Behold, the log is in your own eye, you hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine, or they will trample them under their feet, and in turn and tear you to pieces." I'm going to read the note on this one because this one's really good too. I use this one quite a bit when I'm talking to people. "In the ancient world, dogs lived in squalor and scavenged the streets for food. Jews considered them unclean and used the term to describe those apart from or the enemies of God's covenant community. Pigs were rejected by Jews, probably because they were two scavenging animals, because they too were scavenging animals, and they were unclean according to Old Testament law. Pearls symbolize the great value of the message of the kingdom of heaven. Believers are to be merciful, forgiving, and slow to judge, yet they should wisely discern the true character of people and not indefinitely continue proclaiming the gospel to those who adamantly reject it, so that they can move on and proclaim the gospel to others. If you've ever shared your faith with somebody and they've rejected what you have to say, which it will happen, it'll happen probably quite a bit, you'll get to some people who are just angry. They don't want to hear what you have to say, but these are usually the people who start off with the judge not statements. These are the ones who find themselves righteous in their own eyes and refuse to admit that they may have any faults at all. And instead, they turn all of their attention toward attacking you and trying to belittle you or catch you in your words so that they can make you look bad in the eyes of other people around you. Do not give what is holy, the gospel, to these dogs. Don't. And do not throw your pearls, the pearls of the gospel itself, before swine. Why? They won't care. This is why at the end of the the gospel presentation that you get from Living Waters and from Ray Comfort, he doesn't just tell them the gospel. He asks them, do you care about what we've talked about? Does this impact you in the slightest? Because if it doesn't, he's wasting his time and he knows it. Why? Because Jesus, our King, told us not to waste our time with those people. It may be that later on down the road, God will affect them and change their heart, and then they will be responsive to the gospel. But until that happens, we don't need to waste our time with them. And that's the point being made here. Jesus continues, ask and it will be given you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds. And to him who knocks, it will be opened. Or what man is there among you who, when his son asks for a loaf, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, he will not give him a snake, will he? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give what is good to those who ask him? In everything, therefore, treat people the same way you want them to treat you. For this is the law and the prophets. 2 quick notes here. I've had people tell me that, this line right here, he's talking to the if he's talking to the disciples, he's clearly not talking to evil people. But it says, if you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, clearly he's got to be talking only to the other people, not his disciples. Wrong. Why? Because outside of the work of Christ, what are we? Evil. We are sin-drenched. We can't get away from it. And that's what's being said here. If you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, I'm so glad I'm not like those dirty sinners. Remember that line about forgiveness? We're evil. Read the end of Romans chapter 7 and see how probably one of the greatest church planners who ever lived talked about his own sin, his own struggles against sin in his life. And then realize he was taught directly from God. He rebuked Peter. We are evil. Last, in everything, therefore, treat people the way you want them to treat you. People refer to this as the golden rule, right? It's kind of a nice thing to say, but that's not actually the point being made. Largely what it comes down to is the fact that if you break down the second table of the 10 Commandments, it covers how we treat other people around us. The easiest way to look at it is just like this. Don't do the things on there to other people because you don't want them done to you. Enter through the narrow gate. For the gate is wide and the way broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small and the way narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it. I've also read people say that, this right here, the narrow gate, you have to shuffle off all of your things to fit through, and you have to, no, don't turn this into something that it's not. What it's literally saying is that there are not a lot of people who will find salvation from God. They just won't. It's either too hard or they don't want it. That's it. It's a lot easier to go on worshiping yourself. If you're the one who's never ever wrong, why would you bother turning to somebody who says you are? Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles, are they? So every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. So a good tree cannot produce bad fruit, nor can a bad tree produce good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then, you will know them by their fruits. You're going to know who good pastors are when you see their flocks, their congregations. You see how they interact with each other. Because the produce of those pastors is poured down into the people that they serve. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? And I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them may be compared to a wise man who built his house on a rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on the rock. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain fell, just like to the other guy. The floods came, just as it was before, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and it fell. And great was its fall. When Jesus had finished these words, the crowds were amazed at his teachings, for he was teaching them as one having authority and not as their scribes. We talked about this before. And that's all the notes from now. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up. We will be back tomorrow. Behold, the word of the Lord.